Oh, hi. How you doing? I was just reading The Fate of Douglas Blouse by Matt Frame. Look at this. Fuck off, puppy! How's it going? We're on the village green again today. It's a bit windy. Hopefully it won't get picked up. Look, I've got some official merch. Got some official merch, not in the shops yet though, unfortunately. It's a one-off. It's a one-off, lads. It's truck this weekend. Going back up there in a bit. Cheers, Hollywood. Sorted me out. Friends in high places. He's a good old boy, Hollywood. We like him a lot. What happened so far? Well, Butch is down the Digit and Douglas has nicked Hilda's dog. So, shit's ganning doon, as they say in the tune. So we shan't faff about too much. We're on the village green again today. I'm leaning up against a tree that a dog's probably pissed up against. I don't care. Right. Keep that bloody racket down. This is fucking chicken town. Right. Sergeant Frisk was close to tears. If Petra carried on, he would surely end up displaying the same kind of emotions her daughter had early on. Seated in the chair previously occupied by Reverend Bowen, Petra was now bombarding him with a series of questions relating to the recent decline in law and order and the subsequent whereabouts of the individual suspected as being responsible for it. She also demanded to know what, as a sergeant, he intended to do about addressing the delicate matter of public safety should Douglas Blouse continue to evade capture, particularly with the village fete a mere 2 days away. With a maniac like that on the loose, Sergeant, I'm seriously considering postponing the entire thing, she said dramatically. I mean, what more is he capable of? He needs to be found. He's out there somewhere, getting up to God knows what. Who's he going to target next? It's down to you to find him, Alan, she said, pointing her skinny finger at him, wild and judgmental. Daisy squirmed, clearly embarrassed by her mother's behaviour. The unfortunate truth, Frisk knew, was that Petra was right. Douglas did need finding, and the sooner the better. Perhaps if Petra realised that she was actually hindering rather than helping him, then he might be able to get out there and find him. It was just a shame that it had to have been Daisy that had been on the receiving end of Douglas's charms. If it had been anyone else in the village, you could guarantee that the likes of Petra Carr wouldn't give so much as a second glance. Losing his patience, he was on the verge of telling Petra Carr to button it, but as he opened his mouth to do so, the doors of the office burst open and a visibly distressed Reverend Bowen rejoined the proceedings. My God, what now? Frisk thought, wilting a little more inside. He's taken him, Alan. He's taken him. I just know he has. Jesus Christ, what next? Bowen shouted blasphemously as she entered, swinging a blue and white plastic bag. We've got to find him, Alan. We've got to find him, and quick. Okay, Reverend, slow down. What's happened? Frisk asked, raising his palms to the panicking vicar in an attempt to placate her. Moses, my poor Moses, she shouted before giving him a distressed account of what had just taken place. I've been up and down the high street. I've been in the shop, the garage. No one's seen him. My God, what's he going to do? He's got it in for me, and now he's going to take it out on my poor dog. I just know he's going to do something stupid, Alan. Petra Carr gave Sergeant Frisk her most potent, withering look, shaking her head. Choosing to ignore it, he continued addressing the vicar. Well, Reverend, like I said, we still can't be sure it was Douglas who smashed the windows. Oh, bollocks, Alan, Bowen shouted, startling them all with her colourful outburst. Don't give me that. What kind of idiot do you think I am? Of course it was him, and I'll prove it. Reverend Bowen reached between Daisy and Petra and onto Frisk's paper-strewn desk, grabbing at a small pile of crumpled A4 pages being held down by a piece of railway ballast and selecting the top piece of paper. The remaining paperwork on Frisk's desk was blown to the floor by the fan. Thanks, Hilda, he said, scrabbling to pick them up. Ignoring him, Reverend Bowen placed the crumpled piece of paper on the desk, flattening it out as much as possible, attempting to iron out the creases and crinkles to make identification an easier task. She pointed to a faint row of dots on the right-hand cheek. There is your proof, Sergeant, she said, relaying Bumstead's story to the increasingly bewildered Frisk. Puncture wounds, scars, just like Eric said. That is Douglas Blouse's bottom. Squinting at the image, Frisk was initially confused, wondering how many more times he would have to scrutinise this bizarre image. At first, the pattern seemed a little indistinct amongst the creases and blemishes, but eventually he could see something there. Where's your car, Sergeant? Bowen said, her eyes wild in their sockets. Petrichar, still seated, had gone noticeably quieter in the presence of the maniacal holy woman, presumably enjoying watching the sergeant squirm as more trouble was heaped on him. We need to find them, Alan, Bowen said. Frisk agreed, but they all needed to calm down. He had taken quite enough from these hysterical women. He needed to regain control. Okay, Reverend, okay, we'll go and look for him, he said, trying to reassure her, thinking of a plan that might be good for all of them. What I suggest is, he said, looking at the livid grimace on Hildebone's face, you come with me in the car and we go for a drive round the village and try to find him. Petra, Daisy, you come as well. I can drop you home on the way round. I have enough information from you both for the time being, he said. What he really wanted to say was, I've taken quite enough crap from all of you for the time being, but he held his tongue. Fine, Petra said, rather petulantly crossing her arms. Daisy, next to her, looked relieved at the prospect of going home. Yes, right, okay, Reverend Bowen said, appearing to calm a little. Dennis, can you stay here? Frisk said to his young police constable, Dennis Binsley, seated at the desk in the corner of his office. I'll check out the damage to the allotment after I've done a circuit of the village, he said. That is if we don't see anything of Douglas or Moses in the meantime. Yes, Sarge, Binsley said. Reverend Bowen became increasingly distressed at the mention of her dog's name. Sergeant, please, she said to Frisk, who was retrieving the police car key from a small glass-fronted cupboard on the office wall. Sergeant, please, for God's sake, hurry, Bowen demanded. My dog's life is on the line here. She didn't know just how right she was. That was chapter 13, by the way, and this is chapter 14. Let's not bother stopping. Let's go straight through, shall we? Butch demolished the 12-inch Hawaiian pizza almost single-handedly, Trudy only lending marginal support by eating 2 slices. He drained his second pint of the afternoon before belching rather unceremoniously, apologising to Trudy, who was now on water, for his uncouth behaviour. Like most dogs, when food is around, Finn had been sitting upright beside his master the whole time Butch ate, venturing out from the shade of the bench to brave the heat of the garden and receiving the odd titbit of pizza for his troubles. The dog hungrily devoured it before lapping up water from the bowl that Butch had put under the bench for the panting dog. The ice cubes he'd requested in it long since melted. So why did you call him Finn? Trudy asked. Butch gave her a rather confused look for her troubles. I'll tell you a little story in answer to that question, Trudy, he said, smiling and gently wagging his finger. Not so long ago, a music journalist asked Paul McCartney, "So Paul, what's it like being the greatest living songwriter?" Butch said, holding an imaginary microphone to the invisible megastar seated next to him. And you want to know what he said to that? What Paul McCartney said to that question? Butch said, ramping up the drama. He said, affecting his best McCartney accent, I dunno, you better go and ask Neil Finn. Trudy stared blankly back at him and said nothing, only shaking her head a little. You're joking me, he said. Neil Finn, Trudy, of Crowded House. Crowded House, New Zealand's greatest band. Ring any bells? He said, failing to comprehend Trudy's ignorance. She shook her head and stuck out her bottom lip. Sorry, Butch, the name doesn't mean anything to me, she said, almost in an apology. The name doesn't... Butch trailed off in incomprehension, looking around the garden. Bloody hell, Trude. Trudy gingerly sipped her water. Sorry, she said, smiling as if she had been told off by her parents but couldn't help laughing. "You've got a lot to learn about music, young lady," Butch said, just about managing a smile himself. "You do know who Paul McCartney is, don't you?" he said, now sounding genuinely concerned. She again looked blank. "Well, that was a close one." It's a bit windy out here today. She again looked blank. Butch looked like his eyes were about to pop out of his head. She burst out laughing. "Yes, of course I know Paul McCartney is, you wally. I guess it's just New Zealand bands I struggle with," she said, grinning. Ransom smiled back. Over Trudy's shoulder, Butch saw a small white Fiat Panda coming down Stocks Lane before turning left into the pub car park. The car looked crammed full. From the back seat, an elderly gentleman who looked a little worse for wear leaned forward over the front passenger's left shoulder, trying to gulp down air from the open window. "Oh, here they are, stand by your bids," Butch said, grinning as the doors of the Fiat Panda opened and Terence Russell and Jerry Heyman got out, before pushing the two front seats forward to release the men trapped in the back, struggling to breathe. "Jesus Christ, let me out, let me out," Colin Blunsden uttered frantically, panting like a dog, almost crawling to the serving hatch. "What you having, Bob?" he asked, gulping in air. What you having?" "Fine," came the one-word reply from the man clambering out from behind the driver's seat. Both of them wore vests, shorts and sandals. Blunsden's was a white string vest, and he had a wet tea towel on his head. "Been working them hard today, have we, Terence?" Butch asked as the lead Morris dancer made his way over to the Kiwis' table with Jerry. Both men wore short-sleeved shirts, unbuttoned to the navel, their grey, hairy chests on display. The shorts they wore just about maintained their modesty. Heyman wore a faded blue cap with an embroidered Esso logo on the front. Terence beamed before winking at the Kiwi. "Big day on Sunday, Butch, you know that," he said, placing one foot up on the bench and putting Trudy Ryan in serious danger of eyeing up the antiquated contents of his shorts. "Last practice before the big day, no room for error," he continued. "Got to have them well drilled. People around here expect a certain standard from the headline act, don't they?" he said, smiling proudly. "The gear's all in the wash. I'll be back to hang it out once me and the boys have had our refreshments. God knows we've earned it," he said, licking his lips. "I'll run the iron over 'em a couple of times tomorrow and dish it back out to the boys at the meeting," he said. "I want them all looking their absolute best for Sunday. I want us all to be at our very best," he said. "It's a big..." Terence faltered a little. "It's the first..." He paused, composing himself before continuing. "It's the first since Iris last year, since she went. I've had to get used to taking care of myself this past year, Butch," he said. "Well, you know what that's like," he said, nodding at Butch, who smiled, nodding back. Terence faltered, the words sounding strangled in his throat. "And I just want to look my best for her," he said. "I want to look my best." "You will, Chief, you will," Jerry said, putting an arm around his lead dancer. "Puff," Colin said from over at the hatch. They all ignored him. "Iris," Butch said, holding up his glass as they collectively toasted her memory. Butch looked over at the shambolic figure of Colin Blunsden over at the serving hatch, looking far from his best. "Oh, Colin, they're going to be okay. Looks like he can barely stand up," he said. "Mind you, not much change there." "He's all right, Butch. Be right as rain after a little rehydration. Him and Bob both." "Better keep an eye on him, Terence. You know what those two are like," Butch said cautiously. "Professionals, Butch," Terence said in more spirited tones. "They won't let me down," he said, although Butch didn't think Terence sounded quite as confident as he'd perhaps hoped. "That's why I drove down here, see?" Terence continued, "saving up their strength. The boys deserve a drink for all the effort they put in today. Should be a good one Saturday," he said. "Will be a good one Saturday." Trudy Ryan, looking a little out of the loop, leaned into the conversation. "Pardon me, Mr. Russell, Miss Terence Russell," he said, smiling, turning to face her properly for the first time. Butch interjected. "Yeah, sorry, Trudy, should have introduced the peer. Trudy here's new to the area," he said. "Terence is in charge of these reprobates," he said, pointing at the Morris men now dispersed around the garden. Head honcho of the Stevie Morris men, going to be performing on Saturday at the Fete, eh, Terence? Butch said, gently slapping Russell on the hip. Absolutely, Terence said, grinning from ear to ear. Oh, how wonderful, Trudy said. I very much look forward to my first Fete here as an official Stevie local, she said, before adding, my first of many, I hope. And we'll be happy to have you there, my dear, Terence said warmly. Though what I was wondering was, Trudy said, it's just, is that man all right? She asked, gesturing towards the figure of Bob Dobson, seated on a bench a short distance away from them, wearing his usual dumbfounded expression. Bob, Terence said breezily. Oh, he's fine. Just he's had a bit of a bad time recently. Got made redundant, poor bloke. Still struggling to adjust. Oh, I see, Trudy responded, sipping a drink. When did this happen? Last year, Terence said. Trudy nearly spat out her mouthful of water. Last year? She asked, in disbelief. Bob sure loved that brewery, Butch said, laughing and looking over at the redundant figure. He only properly stopped talking a couple of months ago. Still a great dancer, mind, Terence said confidently. Just as capable as any of my boys, he said, looking over at that hatch where Bob Dobson was upending a glass of water over his tea-toweled head as 2 full pints of lager were placed in front of him. I got 4 more lads for Saturday, Terence said, taking us up to 8. Another 2 dancers and 2 musicians, accordion and violin. They shot off back home. I'll be playing the old squeeze box myself for the young uns from the school, he said, nodding across to the primary school opposite. Going to be doing some traditional stick dancing. Basic stuff really, but it's nice for them to get involved and for the mums and dads to watch them. Always good to start recruiting the next generation as well. Got to keep an eye on them too, mind, eh, Terence, Butch said. Just a couple of shandies down here beforehand to settle the nerves, Butch. That's the tradition and that's all they'll need, he said. It's going to be a proud day for us all. Too bloody right, Terence, Butch said. I'll be down here. Might even have a little surprise for you all as well, he said, smiling at Terence and winking at Trudy. Colin Blunsdon took a tray of drinks from the hatch and ambled shakily back over to his mute dancing companion. Butch counted 4 pints that miraculously remained unspilled on the tray, plus 2 chasers of clear liquid. He looked back at Terence with a raised eyebrow. It's been a long day for them, he said, laughing a touch nervously. Besides, they've got tomorrow off to recover. Only the meeting in the evening, Terence said. You coming? He asked. Absolutely, Terence, Butch said. The traditional pre-Fete AGM with such interesting subjects as how much air is going to be in the bouncy castle, what constitutes a true garden on a plate. Is the lucky dip really that lucky? I wouldn't miss it for the world, Butch said. You should come, Trudy Fruity. Well, maybe I'll try, she said. Depends on Jeremy, really. Hello, what's all this then? Colin Blunsdon said, looking down the causeway, belching a full stop at the end of the sentence. They all turned to look towards the police car that was slowly driving up from the direction of the high street. Like Terence Russell's Fiat Panda earlier, the police car had the same number of occupants, only this car had 4 doors, and so, unlike the suffocating Blunsdon earlier, those seated in the back had access to their own windows, and in this instance were not elderly degenerate alcoholics. Sergeant Frisk drew up to the pub, stopping outside but not getting out. He leaned out of his wound down window. Bugger me, Ellen, Butch quickly piped up, clocking the car's all-female occupants. You're a married man, he said. Does your missus know you're driving around with 3 other women? Before he could respond, the back window jerkily began to wind down further. Petra Carr stuck her head out, pointy nose first. That's right, she said accusingly, wasting no time. You lot just drink away your cares. Never mind the fact that there's a madman on the loose in our village, she said. Vandalism, sexual assault, and now kidnap. Well, dognap, she said, correcting herself. Anyway, whatever. This village is in the midst of a crime epidemic, and all you can do is drink, she said, adding a final judgmental flourish. Disgusting. Hello, Reverend, Terence called out, waving to the vicar in the passenger seat. Still got that waistcoat on, I see. Bowen ignored him. Daisy Carr was slumped in the back seat beside her mum. Frisk finally managed to get a word in. "Oh, didn't you know, Butch? Thames Valley taxi service now," he said. "We've diversified in order to generate extra funds. I'm just doing the rounds," he said, cocking a thumb at his passengers. "Have any of you seen a certain Mr. Blouse on your travels?" he asked with an air of exasperation. "Possibly with a dog," he added. "You mean one of them ones you got in there?" Colin said, pointing at the police car and laughing. Petra leaned further out of her window. "You dirty drunken old man," she spat. "You won't be laughing when you see what state your allotment's in. Don't think we don't know all about you and your foul perversions," she said. "Naked ladies and tractors indeed," she said, shaking her head. "Should be arresting that man for public indecency, Sergeant," she said, tapping Frisk on the shoulder. Frisk, bristling with irritation, ignored her. "Not seen a thing, Sarge," Butch said. "Been very quiet round here," he added. Everyone else nodded in agreement. "Well, if any of you do see him, you let me or someone back at the station know as soon as possible, please. We've had a bit of trouble with him today," he said, "and not just the windows either." "So what's new?" Butch said. "Sergeant, we must go," Reverend Bowen yelled from the passenger seat. Frisk exhaled. "Enjoy the rest of your day," he said, pulling away from the pub. "Naked ladies and tractors? What's all that about then, Colin?" Jerry Hayman asked, smiling suspiciously at the now extremely sheepish-looking Colin Blunsdon. "Piss it off, you," came the curt response. Here we go. 13 and 14. "Piss it off, you bloody tosser." He's a boy, old Colin. Well, tune in next time on Rural Rampage to find out if they trace the whereabouts of Douglas and Moses. Holy Moses! Holy Moses, it's all kicking off in Steventon. It's not really. It's actually quite quiet. It's a submarine. Dave. Right, I'm going back up to truck. See you later.